You have a best friend, someone who isn't family, someone who was never required to like you, never obligated by blood or law or shared last name, and somehow chose you anyway. And somehow that person ended up mattering as much as family, sometimes more. That's a strange thing if you actually stop and think about it. Evolution is not in the business of handing out free rewards. Every trait that survives natural selection has to earn its keep. Big brains are expensive. Empathy takes energy. Loyalty to someone who isn't carrying your genes into the next generation should, on paper, be a waste of resources. And yet here you are, at 1 a.m., texting someone who shares 0% of your DNA about something mildly annoying that happened at work. And somehow that exchange is one of the most important parts of your week. So here's the question basically nobody asks. Did that same thing exist 50,000 years ago? Not the tribe, not the family unit, not the people I'm stuck with because leaving means dying alone in a forest full of things with teeth. An actual best friend. Someone selected, not assigned. Turns out the answer is yes. And the way we actually know that is stranger, older, and honestly more moving than you'd expect. Let's go. Let's start with a math problem, because that's genuinely where this begins. In the 1990s, a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar noticed something odd while studying primate brain sizes. Across species, the size of the neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought, correlated almost perfectly with the size of the social group that species could maintain. Bigger social brain, bigger friend group, essentially. He ran the numbers for humans and got a number that's now famous. About 150. That's roughly the number of stable social relationships one human brain can track at once. Names, faces, social history, who owes who a favor. But here's the part that matters for this video. Dunbar didn't just find one number, he found layers. Inside that outer circle of 150 acquaintances, there's a tighter circle of about 50. Inside that, a circle of about 15. And inside that, the innermost layer, the one anthropologists sometimes call the sympathy group. About 5 people, the ones you'd call at 3 a.m. The ones who'd help you move a body, figuratively, hopefully. And critically, that innermost circle is not just family. Research on hunter-gatherer bands has consistently found that a meaningful chunk of those closest 5 are non-relatives. Chosen people. That's the first clue. The human brain didn't evolve extra processing power for one type of relationship. It evolved a whole architecture for ranking and maintaining chosen bonds on top of family ones. That capacity is expensive. Brains burn a disproportionate amount of the body's calories already. Building an entire cognitive system just to track who your closest non-family allies are is not something evolution does for fun. Now let's go back further, because friendship, it turns out, didn't start with us. Primatologists like Frans de Waal have spent decades documenting something that used to sound almost sentimental to say out loud in a lab. Chimpanzees have best friends. Not just family alliances, actual individual, non-kin preferences that persist for years. 2 unrelated male chimps will groom each other constantly, back each other up in fights against other males, share food they wouldn't share with the group at large, and visibly seek each other out over other available chimps. Researchers tracking wild chimp communities in places like Gombe and Thai have documented specific pairs staying close allies for a decade or more. When one of those partners dies, the surviving chimp shows behavior that looks, uncomfortably, a lot like grief. Reduced appetite, withdrawal, restlessness. Bonobos take it even further, using grooming and social bonding to diffuse tension and build alliances that have nothing to do with genetics and everything to do with who you trust. So by the time actual humans show up in the fossil record, the raw wiring for choosing an ally, not just tolerating a relative, was already millions of years old. We didn't invent friendship. We inherited the hardware and then, as usual, made it weirder and more elaborate than anyone asked for. Here's where it gets less theoretical and a lot more physical, because we actually have bones that tell this story. In a cave in the Zagros Mountains of northern Iraq called Shanidar, archaeologists found the remains of a Neanderthal now known as Shanidar I, nicknamed by researchers Nandi. This individual lived by the evidence on his own skeleton an extraordinarily hard life. He was blind in one eye. He had a withered, likely amputated right arm. He showed signs of a limp from a leg injury. His hearing was probably severely damaged. And here's the detail that stops people cold. He was old. By Neanderthal standards, genuinely elderly, somewhere in his 40s or possibly beyond, at a time when that was a remarkable age to reach. A one-armed, partially blind, partially deaf, limping Neanderthal does not survive for years in the Ice Age by hunting his own food and defending himself from predators. Someone fed him. Someone helped him move. Someone, likely several someones, kept this man alive for years after he stopped being able to contribute in the ways his group needed to survive. And critically, there's no requirement that those someones were his direct family. In small, mixed hunter-gatherer bands, the people caring for an injured elder over years were often exactly the kind of chosen, loyal, non-obligated allies we're talking about. Care like that isn't an instinct that flips on automatically. It's a relationship. It's evidence of exactly the kind of bond you'd call, in modern terms, a best friend who happens to also change your bandages. Shanidar isn't an isolated case either. Archaeologists working across multiple Paleolithic sites in Europe and Asia have documented individuals with severe, long-term disabilities who clearly lived well past the point where survival should have been possible without sustained help from others. Long-term care for the injured and elderly appears again and again in the archaeological record, stretching back well before modern humans were the only human species around. Now let's fast forward through time and go find some living evidence, because you don't actually need fossils to see ancient friendship in action. You can watch a modern version of it happening right now. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the hoansi, a hunter-gatherer people of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, and documented something called Hxaro. Hxaro is a gift exchange system, but calling it just a gift exchange system undersells it badly. Individuals form long-term partnerships, sometimes lasting decades, with specific chosen people, frequently unrelated, sometimes living dozens or even hundreds of miles away. They exchange gifts periodically: beads, tools, ostrich shell jewelry, nothing hugely valuable in material terms. The actual value isn't the object, the value is the relationship the object maintains. Here's why this matters survival-wise. The Kalahari is unpredictable. Droughts happen, local resources fail. When your own patch of land stops producing enough food, Hxaro partners in a different region become somewhere to go. An actual standing invitation, built and maintained over years of small reciprocal gestures, that says, if things collapse here, you have somewhere else. That's not a spontaneous kindness. That's infrastructure. Chosen friendship, deliberately cultivated over a lifetime, functioning as a survival network stretched across an entire landscape. And this is where the whole picture starts clicking into place, because it reframes everything we just talked about. Friendship, the ancient version, wasn't a soft, optional extra layered on top of survival. It was survival. Specifically, it functioned as something researchers now call risk pooling. Here's the mind-bending part, the one that changes how you look at your own friendships. Life for early humans was, by definition, unpredictable. A hunt fails. An injury happens. A drought hits one valley, but not the one 200 miles away. If your entire safety net is limited to blood relatives who live in the same 20 square miles as you, and that specific patch of land has a catastrophically bad year, everyone in your safety net goes down together. Genetically related people tend to share geography, which means they tend to share risk. If the whole point of a safety net is protection against bad luck, a net made entirely of people exposed to the exact same bad luck is a bad net. The solution, the one that shows up again and again across unrelated hunter-gatherer societies on different continents, is to build bonds with people who are not related to you and not exposed to your local risk. A friend across the mountain, a friend in the next valley, a friend whose luck is not correlated with yours. When your world falls apart, that unrelated friend, the one you've spent years feeding gifts and time and loyalty into, becomes the place you go. Anthropologists studying groups from the Hxaro in Tanzania to Australian Aboriginal communities to the hoansi have found remarkably similar patterns. Extensive networks of chosen, non-kin relationships specifically maintained as insurance against the exact kind of local disaster that family alone cannot always protect you from. That reframes the entire emotional experience of friendship. That warm, specific feeling you get around your closest non-family person, the trust, the loyalty, the sense that they'd show up for you at 3 a.m. no questions asked, isn't a cultural bonus feature humans invented recently for fun. It's an ancient, load-bearing survival system that got wrapped in genuine emotional warmth because emotional warmth is what makes a bond durable enough to survive years, sometimes decades, without collapsing. Oxytocin, the same bonding hormone your brain releases with family and romantic partners, gets recruited for these chosen relationships too. Your brain doesn't have a separate, lesser chemical for friendship. It uses the real thing. So did ancient humans have best friends? Not just tribe mates, not just people they were stuck with. Actual chosen, individually selected people who mattered more than proximity or obligation required. The evidence says yes, repeatedly, across an enormous span of time and geography. It's sitting in the brain's own architecture, built with an entire dedicated inner circle for exactly this. It's sitting in chimp and bonobo behavior millions of years before humans existed to compare notes. It's sitting in a Neanderthal skeleton in a cave in Iraq, kept alive for years by people who had no biological requirement to bother. And it's sitting right now in gift exchanges happening in the Kalahari Desert, in relationships built specifically to make sure that no single bad year could take everything away. So next time your best friend does something small and slightly inconvenient for you, drives across town, remembers a bad day you mentioned once in passing, shows up when they didn't have to, that's not just modern niceness. That's 50,000 years of insurance policy still quietly running in the background, dressed up as affection. You didn't invent this, you inherited it. If this story made you rethink what it truly means to have someone in your corner, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into our shared past. Who's the one person you'd call at 3 a.m.? Let us know in the comments.